So, the last Psychic Awakening book is called Pariah. Could this mean that Necron Pariahs are back? It's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. And if you're new to the channel and you want to keep up to date with all things Necrons, then please subscribe and hit the bell button to turn on all notifications so you don't miss an upload. Right, here we go, the Necron Pariah. As you can see, the models in front of you, these are my old classic minis from the old days, the 3rd edition codex, which came out of the codex when they re-updated all of the fluff. However, there seems to be some good source of information telling us that the last book in the series of Psychic Awakening is going to be called Pariah. I've been watching Chapter Master Valric's video, which I'll put a link in the description below for you to check out, and on there he tells us all about where he got the information from. It's the same place that we got the information about War of the Spider, so it seems pretty genuine. But does this actually mean that the Necron Pariahs are coming back? Well, we know the last book is going to have Harlequins, Deathwatch and Necrons in it. And I think out of the three, Necrons are probably the biggest faction, and I really would hope that we are going to get some really good stuff. Now, there has been talk of the Silent King. I actually made a video on that, but I don't think that the Silent King will make a return, unfortunately. But if we get the Pariah unit, I think we would all be happy. Now, as soon as I heard this information from Valric, I went straight to my old Necron Codex, my 3rd edition Codex, and had a look at it because, well, I got very excited about this classic unit, which I used to love playing. So I thought it would be fun to have a look at the unit and some of its stats, and then have a chat about how we think a new unit, a new Necron Pariah unit, could work in 8th edition. So, first of all, let's have a look at the fluff from the 3rd edition codex. Crafted from the terrible symbiosis of Necron technology and human evolution, Pariah represents the next phase of the C'tan's ideal for the galaxy. Resembling artificial beings of soulless perfection, Pariahs radiate a sense of palpable menace and horror to those around them, blotting out psychic emanations and infusing those nearby with a sense of their own mortality. Pariahs embody the ultimate horror of the Necron threat. They sound awesome, don't they? And actually they were pretty awesome on the table. They were an expensive unit. Back in the days they were 36 points each, which, well, a Necron warrior was 18 points, so to give you some idea. Now, the Pariah had a weapon skill and a ballistic skill of 4. It was strength and toughness 5. It only had 1 wound. It was initiative 3. Initiative worked different back then, but that was actually a good initiative for a Necron because most of the others were initiative 2, and it did mean that sometimes you did actually get to fight before another weapon like a power fist. They had 1 attack each. They were leadership 10, and they had a 3+ save. Now, they came with a war sai, but this war sai was very special because it had a built-in Gauss blaster, so the same weapon that was on an Immortal. Now, Immortals were 28 points back then, so effectively you were paying an extra 8 points over them, and you had a war sai. And a war sai in those days were really good in the fact they ignored invulnerable saves, so no invulnerable saves allowed to be taken against a war sai. Now, they also had a few special rules. Soulless. Any enemy unit with a model within 12 inches of a Pariah counts as having leadership 7, unless it would normally be less than that. They also had Psychic Abomination. Any Psyker within 6 inches of a Pariah at the start of their turn must take a morale check or fall back, along with any squad they are leading. If the Psyker is in close combat at the time and fails the morale check, he will not fall back, but will only hit on 6s in the assault phase for that turn. Of course, falling back was different back then. Actually, you could fall back and pretty much fall back off of the table and lose the unit. Also, you had something called sweeping advance, so you could actually lose the unit from falling back if the enemy actually rolled higher leadership than you. Now, Necron Pariahs were also a fearless unit, so Pariahs are assumed to pass all morale checks, even if failure is normally automatic and cannot be pinned. So as you can see, it's very easy to see why a Necron Pariah unit would return in Psychic Awakening. After all, they were our anti-psychic unit at the time, and Canoptic spiders, or tomb spiders as they were back then, they couldn't take a gloom prism. So once they got rid of the Pariah, they had to put some form of anti-psychic ability in the army, and that's what they did. They gave the Canoptic spider a gloom prism, which, well, at this moment in time, spiders just don't seem to work on the table. However, an elite's choice, a Necron Pariah, could that work? Is it worth having? Are we excited about the return of this unit? And what role would they have on the table? I'm going to go back to the Necron Codex. Again, this is the 3rd edition one. Next to the unit it says, Pariahs make an excellent escort for your Necron Lord. Bearing in mind you could only take Necron Lords as a HQ back then. They are armed with a Warseye, which is a devastating weapon at range as well as close combat. Their horrific psychic presence makes them extremely dangerous to high leadership troops and enemy psychers. Now, whilst most people probably think the reason why they got rid of Pariahs was for the fluff, and that could well be part of the case, I personally think it was down to the model, the sculpt. I don't think that these particular models would have worked very well at all in Finecast. The models that you see in front of you are metal. These made into Finecast I just don't think would work. So I think that's why they decided to remake them in plastic, and then they renamed them so that basically old Necron players couldn't use their Pariah models. They'd have to go out and buy the new Lichguard / Praetorian kit. The Lichguard and Praetorians basically took over the role of the Pariah. However, they didn't give them the anti-psyker abilities. Now, I would love to be able to play my Pariahs once again, but what rules are we going to need from them to make them work? If they're very similar to what they used to be, in other words, foot slogging, slow moving models with just a 3+ save, no invulnerable save, well, they're probably going to be targeted and go down quite quickly. They're going to need some movement, and they're going to need some protection of some description. Will the new Pariahs have an invulnerable save? I think that's going to be very important if they're going to be foot slogging or a slow moving unit. If we get a unit which is able to move around a lot more, then they're obviously going to be better. And what range is the anti-psychic ability going to be? In the old days it was 12 inches and 6 inches for their 2 abilities, but the old edition, 3rd edition, was a different game. 3rd edition was all about the assault. It was about getting in up close and personal, the bulk of the damage being done in assault, and Pariahs were the perfect unit for that. If they've only got a 12-inch range now and they're slow moving, well, they're not really going to help that much. So what I'm really looking forward to is reading all of your comments about the Necron Pariah unit, or the potential return of this unit for our army. How do you think they should or need to work on the table? Now, of course, we may not get an actual Pariah unit. It may be just a character, a new character of some description, or maybe Pariah doesn't even relate to Necrons. I have a feeling it does, and I know a lot of Necron players would absolutely love to have the Pariahs back on the table, but only time will tell. Now if you're interested in seeing the video I made about the potential release of the Silent King, then I'll link you up to that video just there. Beam me up.